Hey, everybody, welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs podcast. I'm Kevin McCaffrey. I'm here with Adam Mamawala. That's normal. What's up, Adam?
What up?
Some stuff. More than, my God, like actual some stuff is up more so than in a long time, I guess, baseball-wise. And today we have a very special, oddly timely episode, a draft special, and we are lucky enough to be joined by at Cub Prospects. Bryan Smith is here joining us. What's up, Bryan?
Hey, guys. Good to be watching at least baseball clips again, huh?
Yeah,
it's nice.
It is nice to see clips that, like, they're not, I understand that most of what we're seeing is not terrifically recent, but it is the most recent baseball that's existed outside of, like, Korea. So that's something.
Exactly. Yeah. It's been like rediscovering a lost love or something.
Totally.
Well, and usually I feel like the draft is it's somewhat overshadowed because of the fact that it's in the midst of a season going on. So to be able to like focus everyone's attention on this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's the only sport that doesn't do the draft outside of the actual season, which doesn't seem terrifically sensible to me. I'm sure there must be some sort of logic to it, but yeah, it's been fun to kind of like load up and have this on the calendar for a while. And it's like I've had it on my actual Google Calendar, and I know, Bryan, this has got to be. I mean, this is your hottest time of the year, really. I would think, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote the off-season prospect rankings for Bleacher Nation, and then, once the season got canceled and I didn't get to do my spring training trip, I told Brett Taylor, I don't really know that I'll have content for you until the draft. And so it was all building up to be like, yeah, I have to sort of justify why my name is attached to the site. So.
Sure.
Well, Kevin, I realized recently in a different timeline, you and I are in London right now.
Oh shit! Yeah,
That's
this would have been.
It's like this Saturday and Sunday. It was supposed to be.
Oh man, yeah. Myself and the youngest McCaffrey brother were gonna be in London, and Adam as well. Man, well that's. I mean, this is great. I mean, being in this Astoria Queens apartment. Adam's in New Jersey. Bryan's in. You're in Chicago, Bryan?
Yeah, I'm downtown.
Okay, sweet. So I mean, so we're right now broadcasting, we're recording this in between Cubs pick 4 and 5. They just picked their 4th round pick. Overall, let's start with just overall, how are you feeling about what the Cubs have done thus far?
It's been fun. It definitely has. You've been able to tell that they have a new scouting director. There's been some differences to how they have done things in the past. They have a high schooler at the top of the draft. They've already gotten, college player, a junior college pitcher now. So there's been a lot of diversity to it. They've gone into Texas, which I noted on Twitter as something they've been, for whatever reason, just haven't done very much in the last 6 years. And so I think you do see the mark of someone new running things. And I like the names, but to be honest, I talk myself into the names every draft. So
Sure. Yeah. I feel like with baseball draft time, the straight up quantity of names is enough so that if you're following it, you're a particular kind of dork, because it is not the NFL and NBA draft where the guys you're picking, you're going to see immediately, usually.
Probably. I'm realizing if Liam Neeson had said that and Taken, it would have been a very different movie.
Yeah.
You should know I'm a very particular kind of dork.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense he is. He really nerds out. He very much nerds out about his very specific ways of murdering folks. So, I mean, that is a particular dorkery, I think. But yeah, like, so there's enough guys, so I feel like if you are into it, watching it anyway, you can find a scouting report that tells you something that's pretty cool,
Yeah, once the pick is made, I just start, searching Twitter and Google and YouTube for videos as fast as I can. And yeah, I watch the videos for 20, 30 seconds and I say, okay, there's something I can at least sort of shape as plus, and we'll go from there.
Totally. And I mean, I guess you basically already started answering my first question, which was really what differences can you take from the first 4 rounds with this new sort of captain of the draft that the Cubs have? And you mentioned going into Texas is one difference.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they would have hired Dan if he had a completely sort of different philosophical approach than they do. So I think there are a lot of overlap and a lot of similarities. I don't think that Ed Howard is somebody that, Jason McLeod and Matt Dory wouldn't have liked.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all 4 picks are guys that they certainly would have considered in the past, but I don't know, the compilation of it together and just how sort of diverse the skill sets of the 4 players are sticks out to me as a little different.
Nice. Before we start going just pick by pick with what we got so far, Adam, do you have any questions first? I tend to be between Adam and I think I'm the more prospect nerdy of the 2 of us typically.
Well, I compensated for that by coming up with some good fun facts that I'll pepper in from time to time.
Wonderful.
But, based on the research that I have done, I guess we're looking at two lefty pitchers and 2 bats. That's the most simplistic way to describe what's happened here.
Yeah, I guess the only real, I keep saying that it's a diverse group of 4 guys, but when it's 4 guys and 2 of them are lefty relievers, I suppose there's a little
Sure.
more similarity than I'm noting.
Yeah.
Well, other than, I was trying to think, other than Aroldis Chapman, who we had for 3 months, what other dominant lefty relievers have the Cubs had? And maybe there's a huge oversight here that I'm missing, but I was really trying to think about
You're not a Felix Heredia guy? You're not? Are you?
I'm a big Heredia guy.
Yeah.
I'm a big Sean Marshall guy, but
I actually was a big. Yeah.
I like Marshall. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff Facero might have had a good year in between the bad ones, but he certainly wasn't 104 miles an hour.
Mike Remlinger.
Yes. Yeah, Remlinger. Some of the useful dudes. Yeah, Randy Myers.
More loogies than power lefties, though.
Exactly.
Yeah. A lot of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Cubs now have. They've had Chapman and they have Braylon Marquez and now Luke Little and Burrell Carraway in this draft. I can't imagine there's more than maybe 10 to 20 lefties on the planet that have ever thrown 100 miles an hour, and the Cubs now have three of them. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a weird thing, and it just feels like it does feel like that the Cubs in recent years in drafts have not picked a ton of dudes who have one truly standout double, triple plus tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's been more guys where you can dream on them being solid. And even Nico is a good example of that, where Nico's a guy who I think is, you can see as a very useful player, but there's not necessarily one thing that that seems like an incredibly standout calling card from his skill set, like premium velocity or premium power or premium speed with someone,
Yeah, last year they seemed that they did try for a little more upside than they had in the past. And I think that carried through to this year, but really I think it just carried through to finding a scouting director that told them that he would prioritize upside and they could feel like they were really counting on that.
Yeah. And especially in a draft with 5 rounds, it's as a fan just going in, that's sort of upside is what I wanted to see,
Yeah, for
more
sure.
than anything. So yeah, let's do pick by pick from what we got so far. What can you tell us about our new friend, Ed Howard?
Yeah. What a moment that was, huh?
So fun.
I had no thinking that it was going to be him. I was really worried he was going to be a Cardinal and that we were going to have to root against this guy who's incredibly likable and has all these connections to the city. And we just never heard all spring. I don't think I ever read a direct connection between the Cubs and Howard. So I just never sort of accepted it as a reality. And so they've pulled names out of left field each of the last 3 years, but this is the first of the 3 years where it was a guy that was considered firmly a first-round talent.
Right.
It was just not somebody we thought would be a Cub, so it was a great surprise.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was I think I had a list of 6 dudes that I was hoping to see there, and I didn't have Howard there, not because I wouldn't be happy with him, but sort of like you said, I never saw him connected to them, and it wasn't the type of pick the Cubs have made in recent years. But my middle brother Joe, who Bryan went to high school with, just had a baby yesterday, and we had his first baby. So we were on the first FaceTime literally as the Cubs pick came up. So I had it on behind him. And so Ed Howard, I was like, no, this is great. I'm happy about that too. And I'm
Two
surprised.
babies.
Two
new babies.
Yes, exactly. 2 new babies in the family. So that's very nice. But yeah, he seems like a guy who does have quite a bit of potential for upside.
Yeah, the little bit, but when I looked pre-draft, I mean, sort of the little bit of research I had done on him, it seemed like one of those guys who had a little bit of every tool, but nothing was that loud. And then as I watched a lot of video last night, I mean, he does have some real, I mean, he's a quick twitch athlete and he does have some real tools. And I think that there's reason to believe that there could be power down the line even, which is something that I think a lot of people got into writing that he's a 10 to 15 home run guy down the line. And it just becomes sort of, that gets passed along between every report you read after that sort of becomes the first label.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, I think that if he develops as, on the ceiling end of things, I think that there's a reason to think he could maybe grow to 20 to 30 someday.
Well, you have to also factor in juiced ball inflation.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, truly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Gets to AAA. We're talking, he's bombs all over the place. Yeah. And I think what you're saying about it is interesting to see when you're trying to read up on these guys, how much of that, the contagiousness of what people say about these guys tracks. It's really hard to find, because and I mean, being someone who's trying to learn from the outside, I find myself obviously taking on the same thoughts as everyone else. But then when I saw the video, I mean, his swing really does look cleaner than I thought it was going to look. It looked like it had more speed to it. I mean, when we saw I remember the first time I saw Brennan Davis's swing after he was drafted, I thought it looked like a mess. Like
yeah.
And this looks way better than that. And we've seen what Brennan has done, in just a year in the system already.
Yeah, the initial scouting reports on Howard are that, they sort of say because he has the bat speed and the hand-eye coordination, you feel really good that he'll hit for contact well, and then the power will be, sort of average, below average, where in a weird way, I almost found myself more confident that power would come if he develops into a major league player, that power will come, than being really confident that he will be an above average hitter for contact. I still am going to sort of need that proven to me as the Cubs tweak his swing, and he's only has limited experience against top end pitching.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll see what Chili Davis can do with him.
Yeah, get him back. Yeah, bring him back. It's about time. Chili redemption. All right. So should we move to round 2?
Oh, this is where my trivia comes in.
Oh yeah, please fun fact me, Adam.
So
fun fact me, Daddy.
The first fun fact. Oh, I will. The first fun fact is apparently he is the first Illinois high school position player to be drafted in the first round since 1997. Do either of you have any idea who that person would have been? That's so obscure. A 1997 outfielder who came out of an Illinois high school who was drafted in the first round.
I think I might.
Bryan?
I don't know. I'm gonna let Kevin try.
No, this is it's probably too early. I was gonna say Jason Worth, but I think
yes.
Is it really?
Nice.
I never in a million years would have thought Jason Worth was from Illinois. He's got a real Mississippi vibe.
Yeah, I did not feel a suburban Chicago kinship with just the vibe of Jason Worth during his playing days. But I remember seeing that he was an Illinois dude and being struck by that being unexpected. But man, that's like, that makes him older than I thought he was, I guess, if he was drafted in 97.
Yeah.
Cool.
Here's the other ones. Yeah,
Jason's
sorry, go ahead,
become the go-to comp for Brennan Davis too in a lot of circles, so we can we bring it back there.
Hell yeah. Right. I mean, like a weirdly tall dude, right? Who's tall and good athlete. Yeah.
I mean, Worth had a solid career.
Very much so. Yeah.
Okay, the other thing, obviously, so the connection with Ed Howard being that he was in the Little League World Series was that we saw a video, I think that the Cubs or somebody posted today, where he's like on the field getting an autograph from Starlin Castro, which is super cool.
Great.
Before a game. Here's a trivia question. Who is the most recent Chicago Cub to have played in the Little League World Series?
So we're talking Cub that actually has major league time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I feel like I don't know almost any Cubs ever who were in
There aren't a lot of prominent ones.
What seasons did he play on the Cubs?
The era would have been mid to late 2000s.
Mid to late 2000s.
So like 08, 07, 08 era.
I mean, I don't think this is the answer, but I'd say DeRosa, just because he seems like a dude who in life everything is worked out for. So I feel like he would just be on a little league team that also went to the World Series.
That is actually a very good guess.
I'm going to say
he has
Jake
a real little
Fox.
league. Ooh.
Jake Fox.
Jake Fox represented like
not
the
Jake
Midwest
Fox.
or something.
DeRosa does have a real I played in the Little League World Series vibe. I don't know why, but he definitely does.
He has a real my dad bought me a pitching machine vibe.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
I think this will narrow it down. Starting pitcher who is also known in some circles for having hit a grand slam at Shea Stadium.
At Shea. Well, not. No, Travis Woods.
And he played for a Little League team from Staten Island, if that narrows it down.
Oh, is it Jason Marquis?
Yes, it is.
All right. Marquis, I wouldn't have thought but from the French name that he was a Staten guy, but the first time I heard him talk, I'm like, that motherfucker's Staten Island, for sure. It really had checked out. Love to watch Marquis hit. And Jake Fox, what a great throwback. I was such a Jake Fox believer.
Me too.
Man.
And I'll give you one more. This is the last one.
All right.
Just to see if I can out obscure myself. But also, I think you'll know the answer to this. According to my research, the Cub prior to Marquis, who played in the Little League World Series, was a right-handed reliever, most known for pitching a ground ball double play, a ground ball resulting in a double play in the second to last game of the 2003 regular season. Who was that guy?
Jesus Christ.
Oh man.
It was that doubleheader, that notable doubleheader against Pittsburgh.
What a series of qualifiers. A right-hand reliever in 2003. That's weird because a fun fact about the Cubs in 2003 is that they didn't use relief pitchers. I think was one of the fun things about Dusty Baker's managerial strategy. Do you have any idea who that would be, Bryan?
No. Todd Worrell.
Solid guess.
That is a good guess.
The correct answer is your boy, Dave Veers.
Now, Dave Veers was not my boy, and how dare you for saying so.
And apparently he played for a Little League World Series team from Spain because his dad was like at an Air Force base or something weird like that.
Whoa.
I did some research.
You sure
did not lie about obscure research.
It's very obscure.
Yeah, no shit. Damn, good work. All right, give us round two, Bryan. Who we messing with in round two?
Burl.
and we've never said that before in the baseball.
Pat Burl, but not first name Burl.
Yeah, but a man named Burl. Yeah,
a man named Burl. Burl Caraway, a left-handed reliever from Dallas Baptist. He was considered the best reliever in the draft. This is the first time in a while, if not ever, that I remember the Cubs taking the guy who everyone says will be the first guy to reach the major leagues. And some people are writing that he could pitch in the majors this year. I don't know that I saw that from the video. It does look like he's a little wild. He's got a violent delivery. I don't know if they're going to try to clean it up or if they're just going to let it be sort of one of those effective wild situations. But taking a guy who didn't have much of a spring season and trying to put him into the majors right away, that seems a little much for me, but
sure.
It
doesn't seem like a contending. I could see that happening with another team, but like not if you're in the mix. I think, right. Yeah.
But I mean, I could see him potentially. I don't know, in September 2021 being a guy that if he's dominating in the minors, they think about it if they're being competitive. And he looks exciting. His curveball is really good, and then a high spin fastball. So it's a pick that I think the TrackMan data people really liked, but also somebody who's just dominated on the field.
I like the idea that they went with like the first and second picks respectively, or like someone we're not going to see for a long time and someone we might see very soon.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right. A little bit of both. I definitely wanted to see a high ceiling high schooler in the first round of this particular draft with where the Cubs are right now. And there were a couple other guys that I was hoping to see in round two. I was happy with the Burl pick when they called it there, but there was like Ginn went right afterwards, who was another guy that I was interested in. The Dodgers have had a draft that really annoys me because they're at the end of every round and everyone they pick I love too. But it's
were you hoping for the Ball State lefty?
Oh, I didn't even know. I don't think I even knew about the Ball State. Is Nichols? Was that his name?
Kyle Nicholas, yeah.
Yes, Kyle Nicholas, yeah. I would have absolutely loved a Ball Stater. We got Luke Haggerty if he ever actually makes it as a Ball State lefty. But yeah, that would have been fun. I think he ended up with Miami. But yeah, I thought the second round was a pick where I feel like there's a couple other places where I would have gone, but it's cool to get a guy with two extremely high-end pitches and almost a sure thing major leaguer, you would think, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we don't have loogies anymore, so he's not going to be that, but I think that as a second lefty in a pen, he'll work, if not being a guy who can pitch in the 8th and 9th innings.
Yeah.
I just think Burl Caraway is a fantastic baseball name.
Yeah, or a quarterback maybe. I mean that's a name that plays.
It definitely plays. It definitely plays.
It's a name that plays. It's almost it's a fictional quarterback.
Yeah,
right.
It's a 1970s, mid 70s fictional quarterback for sure.
Or like a made up player.
Yeah.
Kevin Costner. Yes, absolutely.
I was thinking that, or like one of those made up players in Ken Griffey Jr. baseball, where like they can only use Ken Griffey Jr. and everybody else has some version of Burl Caraway.
You don't get the union to sign off on it. You got a Burl in the.
But we all know who the tall lefty on the Mariners named Bolt Lightning is. Come on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So from the first two rounds, Brian, was there anyone that you really wanted in particular that the Cubs could have had that they didn't? Do you have any particular regrets in the moment?
No, I mean, the guy that I was really hoping for in the first round was the one who went to the White Sox. So that was, that's sort of its own sting, but he wasn't available when the Cubs came up. Garrett Crochet, who the left-handed pitcher from Tennessee, was a guy I really liked better than the consensus. So there were some moments where a lot of mock drafts looked like he would drop to the Cubs, and I started to get excited about that. But once he was off the board, to me, I was sort of just willing to trust the vision of the Cubs scouts and go from there.
Yeah. White Sox and Cardinals both with a draft that annoys me because they got specific guys that I was into. The White Sox also got I very much like Crochet and Jared Kelly. The White Sox picked in the second round. I thought was a cool name. Cardinals picked a guy who looks like a really exciting two-way guy. Could also absolutely flame out and never hit AAA, but it just seems fun too. Adam, do we have any round two fun facts before we go to round three?
No, I'm all fun facted out.
Okay, great.
When you say two-way guy, are you saying he pitches and hits?
Yeah, pitcher and infielder. His name was
Jordan Walker.
Jordan Walker. Yeah, the big third baseman they picked in the first round, and then Mason Wynn or something, I think was the.
Mason Wynn, two-way shortstop and right-handed pitcher. Yeah, they got two definitely high upside guys. A lot of risk reward on those picks, but Cardinals voodoo. I'm sure they'll both they'll both work, or at the very least torture the Cubs only.
Yes, exactly. All right, cool. What we got in round three?
Round three, they finally went for a guy with power. The Cubs farm system has very, very few guys that have much power. And so they made up for it by getting Jordan Wogu, who's an outfielder from the University of Michigan, who, was a highly regarded football recruit. And instead of taking a scholarship to play football, he took an academic scholarship to go to Michigan and walked on the Michigan baseball.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah. And so he looks like a defensive end, and he has a ton of power. I think there's some questions about how refined his game is, but the numbers, especially in 2019 when Michigan had a great team, he was the leadoff hitter, and he had a really impressive season across the board numbers wise. So even though he might be a little raw in his on-field tools, I guess he is able to translate them to some real statistics. So that's a good sign.
Cubs love their Big Ten guys, don't they? Schwarber and Happ, right?
Yeah, or Happ,
Cincinnati.
Right.
Oh,
Cincinnati. So Big Ten region, but not
All
quite.
right. Big Ten, Big Ten. And Schwarber went to Indiana, right?
IU, yeah. Mm-hmm. And man, because he's 6'3", 235, and Jordan is, and that's a thick leadoff boy. That is
Right.
you don't see a lot of 235. I mean, of course, the greatest of all time, Anthony Rizzo, is around there. But as far as leadoff dudes, that's a big fella. And I saw almost what stuck out to me most when I just glanced at his stat line for last year when Michigan were they runners up at the College World Series?
Yes.
So runner up nationally. He had 12 homers and 16 steals. That's a big dude getting 16 steals too, I feel like.
Yeah, he played center field for them too for stretches when their center fielder was injured. I think he doesn't get high marks for his defensive work in the outfield, but he is fast enough to cover the ground in center that they tried him out there. So it's a good sign. He'll probably, I don't imagine that by the time he reaches the majors, if he does, that the speed will probably still be a huge part of his game, but he's shown the ability to make some swing adjustments. I noticed like this spring, his swing looked a lot different than the videos from last year. So I think the athleticism is just a good sign that he'll be able to adjust as the Cubs try to tinker with a swing that's a little different.
Yeah.
Was he on your radar at all, or not really?
No, not particularly. I mean, I was hoping this spring to go see some more Big Ten games, and Michigan was definitely a team I wanted to see. They have their catcher went to Westmont High School, which is just a town away from where Kevin and I grew up, and so I was going to make a point to see Michigan, and I was going to make a point to see Max Meyer, who was the third pick in this draft from Minnesota, but unfortunately, we never got that.
No baseballs. Yeah.
We'll always have YouTube, huh?
Right.
Where'd you go to college, Bryan?
I went to Iowa.
Iowa, okay, Big Ten. There we go.
Yeah.
So it's a fun town. Cool. All right. So the last round that the Cubs have picked in as we record this now was the 4th round. And that happened right before we jumped on here to record. And when it happened, I was very excited. I have no idea whether it was the best pick to make, but it's exactly the kind of pick I want in the second to last round of any draft. Do something weird for me.
Right.
Like, I am excited about giving me a weird thing, and this is a weird dude. So tell us about him.
Yeah, Luke Little is a left-handed pitcher from a junior college in Texas. I believe he's from North Carolina. But he became sort of internet famous when Pitching Ninja passed around the video of him hitting 105 miles an hour in a workout in a gym during the quarantine. And, I guess there are some questions of the legitimacy of that radar gun, but
sure, it's amazing how many illegitimate things could be happening here too. Where it's like there could be Photoshop, there could be messing with the actual TrackMan itself, there could be anything.
Oh, the comments below his Twitter post are just savage in terms of doubting this kid who I think is just trying to, raise his profile a little bit. But
right.
But yeah, I mean, he's mostly, I think, forever, no matter how his career goes, be known as the 105 guy, whether he likes it or not. But I think there's a lot of reason to believe that he could be a good player. He's got a nice looking slider in the videos that I saw, and he had pitched this spring at about 95 to 98. And if he really is more comfortable now throwing maybe 100, 101, then that's going to play.
Yeah.
Man, baseball has changed a lot. Can you imagine where like a guy who sits 98 would have been drafted 20 years ago?
I mean, I was just thinking, I think doing research, I think I saw maybe 10 to 12 guys who were 98 or above in this draft. And yeah, I mean, like you said, there would be no Colt Griffin, I remember, was a high school player that threw 100 miles an hour, and the Royals picked him, I don't know, maybe 5th or 6th overall because he was the first high schooler that ever hit 100. Yeah, that had to be in the mid 2000s somewhere. Yeah. And now there were probably 4 high schoolers in this draft that had reportedly hit 100.
Colt Griffin, also a great fake quarterback name, by the way.
Yes.
100%.
Luke Little's not a bad one.
No, Luke Little. And he gets extra points. Anyone who has a name that's opposite of their own physical attribute is fantastic. This guy's 6'8". His name's Little. That's great. It's a fat guy named Tiny. It's the same.
I know. I wish Zach Short were like 7'2".
Yeah, a real O'Neal Cruz-esque shortstop. Yeah, if he could be an incredibly large man. Yeah, so and I mean, yeah, it's a weird, it's cool and interesting when the Cubs have made 4 picks. Burrell is the soft tosser that they've drafted, who's bringing it 98 to 100.
Right.
It's explosive stuff to look at, and that's very fun.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I started to look at what the minor league rotations might look like next year, and they're honestly, you could fill out 5 minor league rotations next year with the guys the Cubs already had, and so adding a couple project starting pitchers in this draft, I mean, it would have been hard to find them the innings. I mean, I know injuries happen and places work out and stuff like that, but the Cubs have the minor league starting pitching depth, so I don't mind them taking a chance on a couple relievers that might really move the needle in the majors. It sort of makes sense to me just from an organizational perspective.
That is interesting, and the thing I had not thought about, and now in hindsight seems like it could have been part of a clear strategy. I mean, I'm sure if there was a starter there they truly loved, they would take him, but they've probably just with the weirdness of this draft, the short amount, the few amount of picks that they get, and as you say, the depth that they have in starters throughout the system, it would be hard to think of a better time to take like real high shots on crazy impact relievers. And they have two guys with nasty stuff now in the system.
Yeah, and I guess the counter to that is they did the opposite in the first round. Shortstop is the position in the Cubs system that is by far the deepest, and the Cubs have I would say 5 legitimate shortstop prospects, and now their first round picks a shortstop, and they're going to sign a guy from the Dominican in less than a month who's a shortstop as well, who's considered the best 16-year-old international player. So the Cubs have a ton of shortstop depth, but I think that's just one of those things that you can't have enough of. You put one at second base, one at third base. I mean, you could have 18 shortstops in the minors and feel fine about it.
Totally,
yeah, make the whole team out of shortstops.
Yeah, make the whole plane out of the black box. Yeah, exactly. And talk about that. So the Cubs are due to. I mean, that's coming up in. Is it still July 2nd? I know that's what it used to be, the international date. Where it's such a weird thing because that's when it is, but like everyone already knows who everyone's signing with, right?
Oh, it's actually one of like the worst things in baseball that they start agreeing to contracts with kids when they're 14 or 15 years old, and everyone agrees just to pretend that they're not real agreements. But yeah, Ben Badler, who works for Baseball America, he literally has the connection between 15-year-olds and teams a year out, and he's never wrong. So it's not
right.
It's not exactly
Right.
It's not a rumor.
Right, exactly. It's a weird thing, and I mean, I guess the rules have it such so that you do see it spread out. If you look at a list of the top 30 guys, there's no one team getting 6 of those dudes, really.
Not
for
anymore.
the most, yeah, not anymore. But yeah, Christian Hernandez is his name, right?
Yes.
What can you tell us about him? I mean, he's 16 for one, but yeah.
I think the funniest thing about Christian Hernandez is he's ranked as, I think either by Baseball America or MLB.com, as the number 3 prospect in this class. But if you read his scouting report, it compares him to Alex Rodriguez and Manny Machado. So
yeah, sure.
I don't know how that doesn't quite get you the number 1 spot. I don't know. I guess Babe Ruth and
yeah, Ted Williams is in the draft, I guess.
Did you guys see that tweet that was floating around a couple weeks ago that was like an old scouting report of Manny Ramirez?
No.
It was insane. It was from someone who had seen him play in high school because he was in like the Bronx or something like that.
Yeah.
And the scouting report essentially said, lazy, best swing I've ever seen. If he stays healthy, will hit 400 to 500 home runs in the major leagues.
Oh man.
that's an incredible scouting report. That's entirely.
Nailed it.
Honestly, unless it was like, we'll take a whiz behind the green monster during a game, like, there's no way you could hit it more
Yeah, just
bullseye.
like things that are so specific that it's like, oh, you're definitely a time traveler. Like,
Yeah.
we'll wear needlessly baggy pants. Like, how do you know
Uh-huh.
that?
Yeah, part of one of the only quadruple cutoff throws in history. Yeah, dang, that's good. Yeah, so how? I guess the only other question I have off the top of my head here is where do you see these guys, or maybe just the top couple guys, slotting in roughly in the Cubs' current lineup of prospects? When we're putting together top 10 lists for the organization, top 10, top 30, whatever, where do you see these dudes?
Yeah, I had kind of gone into the draft saying that almost no matter who the Cubs took at pick 16, he was probably going to be the number 5 prospect in the organization. The Cubs have 4 guys who are really legitimate, and I think of a little higher than most prospect outlets do, in terms of, I think they're all top 100 prospects and very legitimate in that sense. And then after that, there's a pretty healthy break between the top 4 and then the 5 through 8 guys. So I knew whoever they drafted was gonna slot in at number 5, and Ed Howard definitely does that. I think there'll be a lot of fun arguments to be had over the coming months of whether you're an Ed Howard guy or a Christian Hernandez guy. And I think that generally speaking, I'm just the 16-year-olds. I'm more cautious on them most people are. But yeah, those guys will slot in at 5 and 6, and then I think Burl Caraway is probably somewhere in the early teens, maybe the 12 through 16 range. He should probably fit in. Michael McAveen was the reliever they drafted in 2019, and I want to say I had him 16th or 17th, and Caraway's probably a little bit above him. Justin Steele, I think I had 13th, and Steele and Caraway will be an interesting two to compare. Steele might end up in the bullpen, and his stuff's not quite as loud as Caraway's, but he still has the possibility of making it as a starter. So I'd have to think more about which of those two I would rank ahead. And then after that, I would doubt that Wogu or Little are top 25, 30
Right.
prospects right now. I mean, Wogu might be around 30. Little is probably a little bit after that, but so I guess from that perspective, it doesn't seem like the Cubs like killed it or anything. They didn't, they only added 1 top 10 prospect, maybe 2 top 20 prospects, but I do feel good about the draft regardless.
Do you have any sense of what needs they'll look to fill with this last pick?
Here we asked Bryan about what he thought the Cubs would be doing in the 5th round, but we don't need him to tell us what he thought they might do, because then they did it, and he sent us a voice memo telling us about the Cubs' 5th round pick, and this is Bryan telling us right here.
I told you guys I wanted a high upside above slot player in round 5 for the Cubs, and that's exactly what they did. They took Cohen Moreno, a right-handed pitcher from a North Carolina high school, an area of the country that they really trust their scouting. And Moreno looks really solid. He's a 3-sport player. He's got a projectable frame. He'll add 20 to 30 pounds. He was committed to East Carolina, but the Cubs will get him signed for over slot. He's got really good arm speed on video, and he shows an easy ability to spin the ball. I really like what the Cubs did in this draft. They drafted for upside, not safety. And while none of the players are definite bets to be successful in the system, you have to like the chances that one of them hits. Thanks again for having me on the pod.
And there's no real chance that the Cubs lose Howard and he goes to college, right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he has a commitment to University of Oklahoma, so it's a legitimate program, and so that gives him the leverage to, maybe he does ask for a little bit above slot. I want to say his slot's $3.65 million, so maybe he just asked for an even $4 million, and I think the Cubs would probably give it to him.
Right.
They've at least exchanged numbers. I mean, they know at this point where the two sides stand, and I think the Cubs wouldn't have taken him if they weren't comfortable with whatever he was asking for. I would expect in this draft specifically, there will be very, very few players who are drafted that don't sign.
Right.
I think almost every team probably came pretty close to a agreement with the player before they took him.
Yeah.
Now, is that just because of like the state of the world?
Well, because the draft is only 5 rounds this year. I mean,
Yeah.
and the undrafted free agents are guys that are going to sign for 20,000 who are really probably ultimately non-prospects. You just can't afford to lose one of your only bites at the apple.
Right. And that was another thing I was going to ask is what your feelings were about what we might see from these undrafted guys, because as you said, it's capped at 20,000 as far as what they can give. And from what I saw, the last slotted picks are getting in the like 300,000 range, unless I'm wrong on that. So to me already, it just I hate it because of how, to me, it strikes me as clearly there's a lot more money that they could be paying here. The only reason to make this rule is so that no team actually pays what they can pay, and then the other teams don't have an excuse any longer to not pay that money. So that, to me, it seems like what it leaves us is 5 rounds of actual prospects, and there could be some serious fuckery in the 5th round trying to get, like you said, the 5% rule, trying to get guys to sign for way under so you can go over on some other guys in that 5th round. So now it looks like what you're getting as far as an infusion into the system is maybe something close to 5 legit rounds, and then it's almost like you had rounds 20 to 25 or something, but like nothing in between exists, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the team strategies in the 4th and 5th round will be really interesting to watch, because I'm sure the teams that are going to go below slot, they have so much leverage where they can just call guys and say, we got 250,000. Like, you're not going to get drafted. Do you want that, or do you want nothing? Because otherwise you're going to get offered 20,000. So it gives teams a lot of leverage on below slot players. And then, like you said, in the 4th and 5th round, the teams going above slot, there's just not going to be that kind of money floating around. $600,000 is going to just be a ton to guys that otherwise are going to have to look at 3 years of college, and who knows what the state of baseball looks like then. And so I think there'll be a lot of interesting, creative things the teams will do in the 4th and 5th round. And yeah, I would highly doubt that we're going to see a player signed that is going to be much of a prospect. I mean, all the college seniors will have to sign. I suppose a few of them could go back and be 5th year seniors next year, and then they would have no leverage in next year's draft, so they won't get more than $20,000 anyway. So they're kind of SOL, and yeah, I don't have high hopes. I mean, I hope the Cubs use sort of the sales pitch of the organization to get the best of what's available. I just don't expect what's available to be very much.
Right. Cool. Adam, do you have any other cues before we go here?
I have one kind of general question, Bryan, in terms of like what you do when you're coming up with how you rank the Cubs prospects. What is your rubric for that? Like, how much of that has to do with like what their ceiling is versus how close they are to the majors, or like how do you make those determinations?
Yeah, I think that over time I've leaned more towards ceiling than I used to. I think that when I first started doing it, there seemed to be 2 sides, I guess, in the 2000s when I started doing it. There was the Baseball America side, which was almost entirely ceiling. They would rank guys that were 16, 17, 18 years old in the top 100. And then there was Baseball Prospectus, who was all about the floor, and they did 50 prospects, and you would, almost never see a high schooler in there. And over time, those 2 sides have started to come together. And I think that, as somebody who worked at both those places, that was something I wrestled with over time, was which side I thought was more correct. And I guess over time, I think that, there's only 750 baseball roster spots, and there's really only about 150 guys that make a huge impact on the game. And so I think I place a lot of my ranking power on who are the guys that could be one of those 150 guys that make an impact, because the difference between a guy who's a 11th guy on a roster and a 21st guy on the roster, I mean, it's rare that that's a material impact that we feel. And nobody's going to dog you for having not ranked the guy who was who I thought would be the 20th best player on a roster, but was actually the 13th. The ones that you hate to miss are the guys
a real David Bodie type.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is
Yeah,
like great fun value, but like but no one and no one had Bodie on a top 10 list. I mean, maybe ever as a prospect. I'm trying to think if he was at the end, but
yeah, the timing wasn't quite there. I mean, I think that
right,
by the time he got called up to the majors, I was saying, I think right now he's the fourth best prospect in the minors, but it had all just happened so fast that it happened at the end of the previous year, just for like about 2 months, and then the spring that he was called up, he was fantastic.
right, yeah, good kid.
Oh, last question. Was Robel a flash in the pan?
Probably. Yeah, I mean, it'd be pretty hard to believe that somebody with legitimate above average potential was allowed to just flounder in Europe of all places for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's really impressive skills he has. I mean, I think he sort of, regardless of whether he becomes something or not, that was just such a fun story and something just really cool to get roped into. But yeah, I guess when it was happening, I was like, yeah, maybe he is like the 10th or 12th prospect in the system. And I think that I was suckered a little bit there by what was happening. I think that was probably a little high, but yeah, I don't think he's going to be somebody to last. I think he is somebody that could be an up and down guy that plays on a bunch of teams over a bunch of years and, goes between AAA and then injury happens and, like Jim Adducci last year having to come up for the Cubs for a series, just sort of fill in that role for a while. But yeah, it would surprise me if he's ever able to sort of make the adjustments on off-speed pitches to last.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun dude though. It's what a weird story. And yeah, one of those guys who you could definitely see, like, if he played for a bottom 10 team, put up a weirdly like fantasy relevant stat line for a year at some point,
Yeah.
Guy can hit a homer. Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Bryan, for hanging out.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Tell us where people can read your work. Obviously at Bleacher Nation. How do they follow you in particular?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Cub CUB Prospects, and I'll be writing about the draft here for as long as I can stretch it out, and then
yeah,
in July probably I'll redo the farm system rankings, and then hopefully even if on the backfields in Arizona, hopefully they play some minor league games and we can get some intel on that and talk about that in the fall.
Sweet. And would you mind hitting me with a voice memo about whoever the Cubs pick in the fifth round? It's a little, if you
Sure.
are staying up, only if you're
No, I am.
Okay, cool. Yeah, hit me with that. We'll and then I'll include your thoughts on whoever this mystery fifth rounder will be in the podcast we drop tonight. But yeah, Bryan, thanks for hanging out at Cub Prospects. Follow them if you don't. Would be insane if you don't and you're listening to us, but do that, and hopefully we'll hang soon.